الصلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن، خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. الشمس والقمر بحسبان، والنجم والشجر يسجدان. والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان، ألا تطغوا في الميزان. وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان. والأرض وضعها للأنام، فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام. والحب ذو العصف والريحان، فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار، وخلق الجان من مارج من نار. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. رب المشرقين ورب المغربين، فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. مرج البحرين يلتقيان، بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان، فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام، فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. كل من عليها فان، ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. يسأله من في السماوات والأرض، كل يوم هو في شان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا، لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. يرسل عليكم أشواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواصي والأقدام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون، يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. ولمن خاف مقام ربه جنتان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. ذواتا أفنان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. فيهما عينان تجريان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. فيهما من كل فاكهة زوجان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. متكئين على فرش بطائنها من استبرق، وجنى الجنتين دان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. فيهن قاصرات الطرف لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. كأنهن الياقوت والمرجان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. ومن دونهما جنتان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. مدهامتان. جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان حور مقصورات في الخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على رفرف خضر وعبقري حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان تبارك اسم ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام. قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له إذك بالله يا عبته من الضعف. فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيت بالكساء اليماني فغطيت به واسترت أنظر إليه إذا وجهه يتلاله كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك راية طيبة كأنها راية جد رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأكمل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله أتأذنني أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عندك راية طيبة كأنها راية جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه. السلام عليك يا من اختار الله أتأذنني أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافي أمتي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك بالحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك راية طيبة كأنها راية أخي وابن عمي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم ها هو ما ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذنني أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسي وخليفتي وصاحب لواي قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتا يا رسول الله أتأذنني أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ برسول الله بطرف الكساء وهما بيد اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وهامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمنهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن هاربهم وسلم لمن سلمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم. فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، واجزم عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنيا ولا عرضا مدحيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال أمين جبرائيل: يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبالها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل: يا رب أتأذن يهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم قد أذنت لك. فحبت الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله العلي الأعلى، يقربك السلام ويقصك بالتحية والإكرام، ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لعجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذنني يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال: بإن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال علي النبي: يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر قبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وافت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم لا يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر قبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم محموم لله وفرج الله حما، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غما، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فاذوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك النبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم، يا رسول الله، يا إمام الرحمة، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا أمير المؤمنين، يا علي بن أبي طالب، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا فاطمة الزهراء، يا بنت محمد، يا قرة عين الرسول، يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد، يا حسن بن علي، أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله، يا حسن بن علي، أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن، يا علي بن حسين، يا زين العابدين، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر، يا محمد بن علي، أيها الباكر يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله، يا جعفر بن محمد، أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها القاسم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدت اليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله فاستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم فصيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو النجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين.
اللهم صل دروج بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات. حسین بانٹ رہے ہیں نجات لے جاؤ. حسین بانٹ رہے ہیں نجات لے جاؤ. کچھ آنسوؤں کے وزن کائنات لے جاؤ. حسین بانٹ رہے ہیں نجات لے جاؤ. یہ کربلا یہ معجزہ نما کی بستی ہے. یہ کربلا یہ معجزہ نما کی بستی ہے. ارے کفن میں اس کو لپیٹو حیات لے جاؤ. حسین بانٹ رہے ہیں نجات لے جاؤ. کہیں گے ماتمی حلقوں سے لوگ میرے شر میں. کہیں گے ماتمی حلقوں سے لوگ میں شر میں. ہمیں حسین کی جنت میں ساتھ لے جاؤ. ہمیں حسین کی جنت میں ساتھ لے جاؤ. نہیں کروں گا لحد میں انتظار سحر. نہیں کروں گا لحد میں انتظار سحر. فرشتوں کرب و بلا رات و رات لے جاؤ. حسین بانٹ رہے ہیں نجات لے جاؤ. قسم حسین کی پرسے میں کم ہی لگتا ہے. قسم حسین کی پرسے میں کم ہی لگتا ہے. بلند جتنا بھی ماتم میں ہاتھ لے جاؤ. بلند جتنا بھی ماتم में हाथ ले जाओ हुसैन बांट रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for the Isal Sawab or Marhumin listed on the screen and for all Marhumin. Al-Fatiha. Ayyaman Yujibu is requested for the names listed on the screen and for all those in need here and elsewhere. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu yakshifu su'. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء. The celebration of the Wiladat of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam will take place tomorrow, Wednesday, March 17th at 8:15 p.m. Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani will be speaking on the topic of the timeless glory of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, bravery, loyalty, and service. The celebration of the Wiladat of our fourth Imam, Imam Husayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, will take place on Thursday, March 18th at 8:15 p.m. Sheikh Mujtaba Khaliq will be speaking on how can we achieve everlasting joy in this world. Ladies program. There will be a celebration of the Wiladat of Imam Husayn, Hazrat Abbas, and Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhim salam tomorrow at 3 p.m. for all ladies. The program will be held at the Masjid and will include qasidas, Q&A, and much more. 15th Sha'ban programs. As we approach the blessed occasion of the birth of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, please join us for a special weekend full of activities for the entire family. Several events are planned beginning on Thursday, March 25th, with an inspirational lecture by Hajj Hassan Rajab Ali, followed by a youth session on Friday, March 26th. On Saturday, March 27th, there will be a seniors breakfast and family fun day. The weekend will include with a delicious dinner and amal on the 15th night of Sha'ban. We look forward to celebrating with you and your family. Food drive. The Irish team is continuing their initiative of sponsoring food for our local shelter in the month of Sha'ban. The requested donation is $5 per person. However, any amount is welcomed. Donations can be made via PayPal or the website as shown on the screen. Finally, if you or your child is interested in reciting during programs held at the Masjid, please reach out to me at 407-619-2021 for the gents, or Sister Jamila Ghulam Hussain at 407-255-5112 for the ladies, or sign up using the link on the screen. At this time, I'd like to invite Sayyid Shabbir to come recite tonight's majlis with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل. وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. صدق الله العلي العظيم. زينوا مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman, here in Florida and across the globe, wherever you are hearing my voice, Salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: who is Husayn? There's a moment in time where Salma or Fadl, she has a dream in the middle of the night. The news reaches Rasulullah. Rasulullah is in his home. When the news reaches Rasulullah, the neighbors have gathered and they have begun to tell Rasulullah. They say, "O Messenger of Allah, this lady, this blessed lady, she has not slept the whole night. In fact, she has been crying and weeping the whole night. She has seen such a dream." At that point in time, according to the narration, Rasulullah knows, but to explain to you and I, he begins to say, what is the matter? They say that she has seen a distressful dream, one that she does not know how to interpret, one which she does not know the meaning of. And because she does not know the meaning of this, she has become very worried. She has not told us what it is, but we are very afraid based on what she said and how she's acted. At that time, Rasulullah says, "Don't worry, I will take care of the matter." Rasulullah gets up, and when Rasulullah gets up, he proceeds towards her. And when he proceeds towards her, he arrives in that vicinity, and he begins to say, "What is the matter? I am hearing that you have not slept. I am hearing that you have been crying. I am hearing that you have been worried." At that point in time, she says, "Ya Rasulullah, I've seen a dream. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know how to interpret it. I don't know what to say of it. And I don't even know if I have the words to tell you what it was about." At that point in time, to give ease and comfort to her heart, Rasulullah said, "Know that this dream that you have seen, it does not mean what you think it means." She had derived her own interpretation. Doesn't it happen when we sometimes see a dream, we make our own interpretation and story about what it means. And sometimes our mind goes to the negative aspect of worry and concern. Rasulullah says, listen, that dream that you have seen, worry not, it does not mean what you think it means. It has a blessed meaning. He said, "Ya Rasulullah, how can it be? Ya Rasulullah, I saw something that I don't even know if I can repeat to you." He said, "Listen, just tell me." He said, "Listen, just tell me and then I will go from there. But trust me, don't worry." He said, "Very well. What did you see?" She says, "I saw a situation where a piece of your body had been cut from your body. And this piece of your body had been thrown into my lap. And at that point in time," she said, "I woke up in a state where I was distressed and worried." Obviously, if you see a dream like this, what do you worry? Anyone would worry. Rasulullah looks back and says, "This is a blessed news. The interpretation, the meaning of this dream is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bestow on me a son through my daughter Fatima al-Zahra, and you will be in part of delivering this child." And that's exactly what happened. And that is when the blessed Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib emerged on this earth, who you and I are here to commemorate on this night of the 3rd of Sha'ban. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahu Akbar, my dear brothers and sisters, what does one say about Husayn ibn Ali? What does one say about Aba Abdullah al-Husayn? What does one say about the person who, the merits, one cannot enumerate the merits of Husayn. Husayn is that individual, that entity that we give 10 nights to at least in the month of Muharram. I have to, in this brief moment, condense with you 10 nights. We have 10 nights of Masa'ib during Muharram, we have to do 10 nights of Fadail in a few moments. So I request that you stay with me. Who is this Husayn? This story that I just told you and narrated to you, it somehow, in a glimpse, captures the feeling and the emotion that one has with respect to Husayn. How? Because when the name of Husayn comes up, it's a moment, it's an environment, it's a state in which the heart and the mind do not know how to react. Because the heart is sorrowful, the heart has tears. But at the same time, tonight is his birth, tonight is his Wiladat, tonight is his Jashan. What do you say about him? Perhaps it's the poets who have encapsulated better than anyone else. Shabbir Kirmani, the poet says with respect to this night of the 3rd of Sha'ban, what do you say? Jashan Shabbir ka manana hai. What's the kayfiyat that you and I have? Jashan Shabbir ka manana hai. Aaj aansu ko muskurana hai. Jashan Shabbir ka manana hai. Aaj aansu ko muskurana hai. The poet says that we have to commemorate the celebration of Sayyid al-Shuhada, of Husayn ibn Ali. What is it? How do you do it? The tears have to smile today. Isn't that the case? That our hearts, the riwayat say, I don't say it, the riwayat say, Inna liqatl al-Husayn hararatan fi qulub al-mu'minin. Doesn't it say this? That verily in the remembrance of Husayn, there is a fire that is in the hearts of the mu'mineen, the believers, that's blazing, and it never extinguishes. This is Husayn ibn Ali. Who knows who Husayn is? Therefore, in the brief moments that we have together, I want to give a surface level of analysis of Sayyid al-Shuhada. First, understanding and trying to look at his global persona, his universal message. What message is it that Sayyid al-Shuhada gives to the entire world? That how can we learn from that, and how can we share this message with the entire world? I then want to come to Aba Abdullah al-Husayn in the Quran al-Majid wal-Furqan al-Hamid. And then I want to get further after the Quran, the ahadith with respect to Sayyid al-Shuhada that are accepted by all Muslims. Shia Sunni doesn't matter. I then want to look at, is it possible to understand the status of Sayyid al-Shuhada based on the question that I asked at the beginning? Who is Husayn? Can we answer this? And what are some of the riwayat based on the Ahlul Bayt that have been told to us with respect to Sayyid al-Shuhada that shed some glimpse of light on Sayyid al-Shuhada so you and I can understand? And finally, we will revive the hearts with the memory of Sayyid al-Shuhada, because words fail to reach the status of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and the poets have attempted. There is no further attempt. This is our agenda for the brief moments that we have together. Wherever you are, here in Florida or across the globe, wherever you are hearing my voice, send a salawat on Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. There are few individuals in the history of humanity who transcend zaman and makan, who transcend space and time, to transcend the place where you are born, to transcend the time in which you are born, to transcend, for example, being born in Mecca, or being born in India, or being born in Africa, or being born in a particular part of the world. They transcend that. They transcend time as well. Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Husayn, is that individual who is known from the corners of Australia to the corners of Seattle, from the corners of South America to the corners of China. There is not a single place on this planet that does not have the azab of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Therefore, on this basis, if I go to the Caribbean, I notice that there are people who are commemorating Sayyid al-Shuhada. If I go to India, I see people commemorating Sayyid al-Shuhada. Pakistan, in Africa, South America, North America, every continent has the remembrance of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Therefore, a global persona like Imam Husayn is very rare in history, number one. Number two, the principles, the universality of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Aba Abdullah. His being of his truth, his honesty, his freedom, his integrity, his bravery in the face of difficulty. Only 72 people with him. If you add the family, 100 or so. These against 30,000 on the other side, if not more. Allow me to explain this number very quickly. If you know history, I recommend you read the history of the Peloponnesian War. It's one of the greatest wars in history. This was a war where you had, on one side, you had a very large army, on the other side, you had very small army. The general on the small army was Hannibal, if you know the name. Hannibal had a very small army compared to the opposition on the other side, the Athenians. At that point in time, he had to make a decision. How do I conquer this other team? He did a strategy where he had the weakest men and he had a semicircle. And he allowed them to come from the front. And he had a strong men on the outside. And so the enemy came from the inside. They all came into a circle trap, and he had his other men come around the other side. And they encapsulated everyone. And the people in the middle were rendered useless. So in 3 hours, Hannibal and his army finished off the opposing army. So why did I share this story with you? The reason I shared this with you was because when the other side lost, history is written by the victors. They had a very large army. They began to reduce the size of their army because they had been suffering such a humiliating defeat. Similar thing happened in Karbala. There was a huge army on the other side. But because the situation where even 72 men were in opposition and held them off for so many hours, they tried to reduce the number of people on the other side in Yazid's army. These people, Imam Husayn, Abu Fadl Abbas, and these immense personalities were able to fight the enemy and push them away for a very long time. Nonetheless, how is it that this man stood with such bravery and courage that history holds the message of Sayyidul Shuhada till this day? On top of that, truth, speaking truth, even though you are few. These are lessons that are universal. Martin Luther King, who we commemorated a few weeks ago in America, was an individual who said a very famous quote. He said that there may come in everyone, and I'm paraphrasing, everyone's life a moment where you have to either stand up or you remain quiet. If you remain quiet, you may be breathing, but you are as dead then as you are at the moment when you go into your grave. This is the exact sentiment of Sayyidul Shuhada. That I may be living 57, 58 years old, and I may live in an environment where everyone begins to do bay'ah left, right, and center. But I have a responsibility, and I must stand at that moment in time. And he did, and he gives us this universal message, this universal lesson that you and I learn from and we implement in our lives. But with respect to Sayyid al-Shuhada, there are the riwayat and there are the Quranic verses. For example, which verse? The verse that I recited at the beginning with respect to Surah Fajr and various other verses. You will find them in Mubahila, in the verse of Mubahila, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Abna'ana wa abna'akum. The children of Rasulullah are brought forth as Imam Hassan and Imam Husayn. Imam Husayn is there as well. O ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'inna irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. The ayah that I recited at the beginning. O soul that art at rest, return to your Lord in a state where He is pleased with you and you are pleased with Him. Verse after verse with respect to Sayyid al-Shuhada. With respect to the birth of Sayyid al-Shuhada, according to riwayat, Sayyid al-Shuhada did not have a typical 9-month pregnancy in terms of his expectancy. He was delivered at the age of 6 months. 6 months in the womb. The same way Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, had a 6-month period in the womb. The same way Nabi Yahya, John the Baptist, was in the womb for 6 months. Additionally, riwayat say with respect to Sayyid al-Shuhada and his stay on this planet, there's an ayah of the Quran that says, for example, the mother keeps the child in the womb for 30 weeks. And the age of 40. And on top of that, I am really running through this very quickly, please bear with me. And do good to your parents. وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَيْنِ. When the ulama do the tafsir of this, they say this is in reference to Sayyid al-Shuhada. There are 3 possibilities of who this relates to, based on the 30 weeks and the rest of the ayah. It's either John the Baptist, it's either Isa ibn Maryam, or it's Husayn ibn Ali. The ulama say that because the ayah says up to the age of 40 years, it cannot be John the Baptist, it cannot be Yahya. Why? Because Yahya did not live to the age of 40, he was killed before 40. So that means he's eliminated. So it's either Jesus, this verse is either about Jesus, or Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. Sheikh Saduq is narrating this. At this point in time, he says, then the ayah continues, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَيْنِ. Do good to your parents. Isa did not have a father, he only had a mother. Therefore, he's eliminated from this as well. They say the only person this verse can be about is Husayn ibn Ali. You see, Husayn is one of the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you and I, if we try, we can try to get a glimpse, but we cannot get to the station of Husayn. Husayn is too high. You know, sometimes in the riwayat you will find, sometimes in the poetry you will find. Don't ask me who Husayn is. In Arabic poetry you'll find it, in Farsi poetry you'll find it, in Urdu poetry you'll find it. Na poochiye ke kya Husayn hai, and things like this, you'll find this. Do you know that this is found exactly in the hadith and the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt? Do not ask who Husayn is. I'm returning to my original question. Do not ask. At least 5 individuals in history said, do not ask me who Husayn is. Because the manzilat, the fadilat, the stature of Husayn is too elevated. For example, who? The first, according to riwayat, is Jibreel. There's a moment in time on the 3rd of Sha'ban, the malaika, the angels are going in droves. The riwayah says 1,000 qaba'il, 1,000 tribes. Now according to the riwayah, each tribe has 1 million angels. You do the math. 1 million angels in each tribe, 1,000 tribes, that's 1 billion angels. They are heading where? They are heading towards the house of Rasulullah. Allahu Akbar. Why? They have received news that there is an immense occasion that's taking place in the house of Ali and Fatima. What is that? At that point in time, according to the riwayah, there is an island on which, in our language, island, on which there is an angel by the name of Fitrus or Fatrus. Now, I pause here for a moment. There's 2 aspects we need to consider here. There's a question that people ask, which is a good question. Fitrus, the very famous incident, the angel who had lost his wings. They say, how is it that he lost his wings? Because an angel does not have free will. An angel does not have ego. An angel does not have a will. You and I have this choice. But how does an angel have this? And therefore, if the angel has this ability, then how is it that he lost his wings if they don't have that ability? Number 1. Number 2, there's the question of the reference. I want to answer the second question first. With respect to the references are very solid. I've asked ulama, I've done my own research. Shaykh al-Saduq, Shaykh Tusi, Alama Majlisi, all of them and numerous other scholars have narrated this riwayah of Fitrus. In fact, they've said there's another angel that we don't talk about, Darda'il. I don't have the time to discuss that. These both were granted cure by Sayyid al-Shuhada, by Husayn, at his birth. The reference is solid. But with respect to this, the riwayah says that Fitrus or Darda'il, both of them, the issue was not that they had done something guna or ma'siyah or something haram. They had done similar to what prophets do, tarke awla. Tarke awla is to not go down the optimal path, but suboptimal path. I don't have much time to go into the details of this. Nonetheless, one riwayah says Fitrus, Allah asked him to do something, the angel, and he felt a sense of pride that Allah asked him to do this. And when he felt that sense of pride, at that point in time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for his pride, removed his wings. This is one riwayah. Another riwayah says with respect to Fitrus, that there was a situation where he slightly hesitated to do the task that Allah said. This is lesser opinion, but it's there. I wanted to share this with the audience. Nonetheless, Jibreel is going with 1 billion angels towards the house of Rasulullah, towards the house of Ali and Fatima. When that gust of wind of the malaika passes by the island in which Fitrus is, there's a moment in time where Fitrus calls out to Jibreel. He says, Ya Jibreel, what is it? What is this situation? Why are you going with so many angels? Where, in which direction are you going? What's going on? Allahu Akbar. At that point in time, Jibreel, who is the chief of the malaika, who's the chief of the angels, at that point, he says and he stops and he looks back towards this individual. He looks back towards Fitrus and he says, do not ask me about Husayn. At the first level, the first narration that we have in our books. Don't ask me about Husayn. Why? Because Husayn is that individual who the heavens and the earth are joyous because of his birth. The first narration. And at that point in time, when Fitrus heard this, he says, Oh Jibreel, can you please get me the permission to go with you? Take me on your back and take me towards the house of Ali and Fatima. At that moment in time, when Jibreel accepts and takes him, and when he goes, according to the riwayah, he brushes his shoulder on the cradle of Husayn. Allahu Akbar. He didn't touch Husayn ibn Ali. Husayn is too high. Because today people would say, for example, with respect to why do you go to Karbala, why do you go to Ziyarah, why do you touch the Zariya? At that point in time, okay, maybe somebody touched Husayn and got barakah, but Husayn's not physically here anymore. Fitrus, his shoulder touching the crib and the cradle of Husayn tells us that there is shifa in the cradle of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa The first person in history, Jibreel says, don't ask me about Husayn. It's too exalted, too high, too high. Second person in history who said, don't ask me about Husayn. You won't understand Husayn. I can't explain Husayn. Husayn's too elevated. Who? Muslim ibn Aqil. When? Muslim ibn Aqil, the Safir of Imam Husayn, the ambassador of Imam al-Husayn. When Imam Husayn sent him towards Sham, at that point in time, when the people of Kufa, when he went to Kufa, at that point in time, he was fighting the enemy. Remember when they were trying to capture him? He fought very courageously. At that point in time, when they captured him, he was riddled with blood. He was riddled with lashes. He was riddled with cuts. At that point in time, they said, give bay'ah to the Amir. Give bay'ah to the Amir. Amir referring to, you know, X, Y, and Z. He says, give bay'ah. He says, I only have one Amir. My Amir is Husayn ibn Ali. I have no other Amir. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says, I have no other Amir. He says, Imam al-Darain. He says, don't ask me. He said, tell me about your Husayn. He says, tell me about your Husayn. He says, don't ask me about Husayn. Don't ask me about Husayn. That's second time, Muslim ibn Aqil. He says, Imam al-Darain. He is the Imam of the two worlds. He is a Tahir. He is Mutahhar. And he is Tahar. My Imam, he is Tahir. He is pure. He is the one who makes pure. And he is the essence of purity. Allahu Akbar. This is Muslim ibn Aqil speaking about Sayyid al-Shuhada, his cousin and his Imam. And he says that he's the one who is born from Tahara. When your Imam is rijz, he is filth and he is born from filth. This is Muslim ibn Aqil, the second individual who said, don't ask me who Husayn is. The third individual in history is who? Salman al-Farsi narrates, Salman al-Muhammadi narrates, I'm sitting in the masjid. When I'm sitting in the masjid, I see Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib looking at the face of Husayn, his son. When he's looking at the face of Husayn, I see him staring so intensely, and Imam Hassan was on the side, he wasn't paying as much attention. At that point in time, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen takes his son, or takes Imam Husayn in his hands, and he begins to look at him and give attention that I had never seen, Salman says. At that point in time, when this happened, Salman says, I said to Ali, I said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, I said to Madhar al-Ajaib, oh my Imam, is it that you are giving Husayn this much attention? I thought maybe you love Husayn even more than Hassan. When he said this, according to the riwayah, Imam Ali looked back and said, oh Salman, do not ask me about Husayn. Because Husayn is at that level that you cannot explain. Then the Imam says that we are the arcs of salvation. Safinatun Najat. But Husayn's Husayn's ark is the fastest of them all. Allahu Akbar. Who's saying this? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying this, that the fastest of the arcs is the ark of Husayn. Allahu Akbar. There's a riwayah I want to share with you here. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. To understand Husayn, to try to comprehend Husayn, because your du'as, we all have du'as, we all have hajat, we all have wishes, we all have desires. Someone it's health, someone it's wealth, someone it's less stress, someone it's X, Y, and Z. Your hajat will be delivered in this night, the same way Fitrus was given this night. Understand Sayyid al-Shuhada, a riwayah that is accepted by our ulama, by Sayyid Kashani, who's one of our esteemed scholars, Ayatollah Kashani. He says there's a riwayah accepted by the ulama with respect to what has been said by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. What does he say? He says, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah will arrange all of the people of Mahshar in 1,000 rows. 1,000 lines, 1,000 rows. One after the other, after the other, after the other. He says, one of those rows, one of those saf, the shifa'ah, you read Du'a Tawassul just a moment ago. The shifa'ah of one of those rows will be done by us, the ma'sumin, the 14 ma'sumin, 13 except one individual. 999 of the rows will be done, shafa'a will be done by them for Sayyid al-Shuhada. 999 rows, Sayyid al-Shuhada will do their shafa'a. Allahu Akbar. He says, and then he continues, he says, that one row that we will take care of, even Husayn has a right in that, and Husayn will do shafa'a for some individuals in that. Sayyid al-Shuhada is not an ordinary individual, my dear brothers and sisters. Who's the fourth individual according to the riwayah? There was a companion of Rasulullah. He was much younger, of course. He used to play with Sayyid al-Shuhada at the fourth level. Abu Darda'il. He says, listen, he used to play with Imam Husayn at a young age. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. If you could please stay with me. I only have a few minutes. I have to condense a lot, inshallah. Another Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. He says, I was playing with Sayyid al-Shuhada. They used to play a game with sticks. The game was like this. You throw one stick in the air and the other person throws the stick after the other stick. If the sticks hit, then you win. If it doesn't, then the other person wins. And what happens if you win? If you win, then the other person has to take you on their shoulders and then circle you around. At that point in time, there's a moment in time when they're playing this game, Imam al-Husayn, he throws it in the air and the other person, he throws the stick and it touches. When it touches, whenever it is Sayyid al-Shuhada's turn, for example, to lift the person or go on the shoulders, at that point in time, Sayyid al-Shuhada, he would respond that you will, for example, the one who Rasulullah's body touched, as in, of course, according to the riwayah, Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam was on the shoulders of Rasul al-Azam. Rasulullah would become a play animal in the sense he would take the child on their shoulders. Or for example, Rasulullah would extend his salah for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Nonetheless, at that point in time, he said, will you try to pick up the one who, for example, Rasulullah picked up and Rasulullah held? Or for example, will you sit on the shoulders of the one Rasulullah picked up and put on his shoulders? So when it was Imam Husayn's turn to lift, at that point he said, will you sit on the shoulders of the one Rasulullah himself picked up? And then you say, no. And then he would pick up Imam Husayn. But then when Imam Husayn would, of course, playing, of course, when Imam Husayn hit the stick and he won, at that point in time, the person had to take him on his shoulders. Imam Husayn, according to this riwayah, he says that will you not put on your shoulders the one who Rasulullah would put on his shoulders? On the opposite end of the spectrum. And then he would lift him. This Abu Darda'il, he goes to Rasulullah. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I want to share something with you. He says, what is it? He says, this grandson of yours, Husayn, we play this game. And Rasulullah knew what he was talking about. He says, whenever it's time for Husayn to take me on his shoulders, he says, will you go on the shoulders of the one who Rasulullah picked up on his shoulders? At that point in time, I say, no, out of respect. He says, but then whenever it's the time for Husayn to come on my shoulders, he says, won't you lift the one who Rasulullah lifted on his shoulders? At that point in time, he says, on both situations, I'm always the one who puts Husayn on my shoulders. But, he says, Ya Rasulullah, despite this, the love of Husayn in my heart never decreases, it only increases. He says, listen, Rasulullah says, what you just told me, know that Husayn's level is so high that do not ask me who Husayn is. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the position of Husayn. And this is the sila of the love of Husayn in your heart that has caused you to feel this affection towards Husayn. Allah will... Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. It's a very long narration, I'm condensing. The final one, who is the final entity that said, do not ask me who Husayn is? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. Allahu Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a hadith Qudsi himself, when the angels asked him about Husayn, he said, do not ask me about Husayn. Because I created him with my own qudra. He created Adam with clay, he created Husayn with his own ability. Now what this means, the ulama define. This is something that the layperson cannot understand. 5 individuals have said, entities have said, do not ask me who is Husayn. On top of that, another hadith that the 6th Imam says, that is accepted by all our scholars. That it takes a very high level to understand this. No one really understands it. But it's an authentic hadith. That's all the ulama will say. What? the one who goes for the ziyarah of Sayyidul Shuhada in Karbala, it is as if they have gone for the ziyarah of Allah on the Arsh. Allahu Akbar. Now people get ideas, shirk, this is acceptable, is it not? Ulama have given some explanation. I'll give one very quick one. When you go to Karbala and you go to the Zari, may Allah grant you all the ziyarah of Sayyidul Shuhada in Karbala, inshallah. When we go and you put the hand on the Zari and you look there, do you see Sayyidul Shuhada directly? May Allah give us the opportunity to have this level. But we don't physically see Sayyidul Shuhada. We see the Zari, we may see the grave inside, but Sayyidul Shuhada we don't see. The ulama say similarly, when you go to the Arsh of Allah, you will not see Allah, because Allah is not limited to Zaman and Makan. Allah is not limited to time and space. Allah is much above this. Allah is much exalted above this. So therefore, when Allah is saying this, and the Ahlul Bayt are telling us this, the message of Allah, that when you go for the ziyarah of Sayyidul Shuhada, it's as if you've gone for the ziyarah of Allah on the Arsh. It's in that line, in that vein. Allah is Allah, Husayn is Husayn. But it's to emphasize the importance and the significance of Husayn. My dear brothers and sisters, as I draw to a conclusion, this Husayn has given countless, as a reciter, when you travel, you begin to hear the narrations and the stories that the mu'mineen tell you at dinner tables, after majalis, for example, in different continents. And if you hear it one time, you begin to say, maybe. But I can tell you with my hand on my heart, hundreds if not thousands of times, the miracles of Sayyidul Shuhada that happen in your lives and my lives. The mind cannot comprehend Sayyidul Shuhada. One example, not too long ago. This is a very well-known narration in Iran. It happened, very well known, not 1400 years ago, in the modern era. A reciter was reciting the Masaib of Sayyidul Shuhada. He was reciting the Gham Bayan of Sayyidul Shuhada. When he's reciting the Gham Bayan of Sayyidul Shuhada in his house, this was a village in Iran, a remote village. In this village, when they were reciting, they had a gas container, a canister, which was for their stove. This stove, gas canister, the person who's reciting the Masaib on the mimbar or on the chair, and the people are sitting, they cannot see. He sees that situation. When he sees that that is caught on fire, he says the people are at risk. At that point in time, he got up right away, picked up the gas can, and he wanted to toss it out the back door. When he got to the back door, he realized the back door was locked, he couldn't open it. What happened? The canister burst. When the canister burst, he went to the next level, the second floor. The narration, what happened, the people who were there said that he burnt to such a level that there was almost no hope for him. They gathered him, he was burned, 3rd degree burned, so he was totally burned. 1st degree burnt, totally burnt. All of them. They took him to the local hospital. The local hospital men said, listen, we can do everything that we can, but he won't live for more than a few days. What do you want to do? Look at his state. His brother said, listen, just put the bandages on him. Just put whatever you can on him. At least we can help him survive. Maybe we can get into a bigger city. They put some band-aids on him to help him survive for a little bit, to ease the pain a little bit. It was enough for them to get him to the next nearest big city. When they got him to the big city hospital said the same thing. Listen, we can help treat him and ease his pain for a couple of days, but he's not going to survive. His damage is too much. He's bleeding from head to toe. The burns are too much. His brother said, no, listen. He's a zakir of Sayyidul Shuhada. He's been reciting the Masaib of Sayyidul Shuhada his whole life. Just help him. And the rest they'll take care of. They said, very well. So they put the bandages. Now, if for those who have gotten burned, may Allah protect all of you, there's a moment when you have to get bandages, you have to change the bandages. And that process hurts immensely. And so they would have to do this for him. They have to remove the bandages. They would do this every single day, and he was in immense pain. One day the doctors in the hospital said, we have to do surgery on his leg. Now listen, this surgery, whether it goes well or not, if it goes well, he survives. If it doesn't go well, we have to amputate the leg. It's a very difficult situation. He says, very well. At that point in time, when this happens, he says that, look, the situation is this. Either you survive or you get your leg amputated. It's two bitter situations. He says, very well. At that point in time, when all the doctors came, the nurses came, and they told him the situation, he said, very well. He said, before you begin the operation, I just want you to do one thing. I will recite Masaib today. I will recite Masaib today. And I want you to listen. So of course, all followers Ahlul Bayt there. He said, but I'm not going to recite Masa'ib of Sayyid al-Shuhada. I always recite the narration of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Today, I'm going to recite my own Masa'ib about what I've gone through. So he began to recite the Masa'ib of his own life, about what he's gone through and what difficulties. Everyone's crying. The doctor's crying, the nurses are crying, they're all crying. At that point in time, he begins to go in a state. He says himself, I went in a state where I was not conscious. I was not aware of time. He was not sleeping, but I was not aware of the environment. He said, when I was not aware of this environment, I saw a nur emerge, and I noticed that I was in a room and a light emerged. When this light emerged, there was a moment in time where an individual, an entity emerged. And I saw nur on his face. When I saw nur on his face, he said, Salamu alaykum to me. I said, Wa alaykum as-salam. He says, do I know you? Who are you? He says, you've recited my Masa'ib your whole life, you don't know who I am? He says, I'm your Imam. He says, what's the matter? He says, Yabna Rasulullah, from head to toe, I'm in burning. I have no hope except your door. He said, very well. Imam took his hand, and he rubbed it from head to toe of this individual. He said, from this point in time, he noticed that other people were coming into the room. He said, later I realized it was the nurses and the doctors. He said, who are these people? Sayyid al-Shuhada said, these are Sadat and other people. He said, this one, she's Sayyid? He said, yes, this is a Sayyid, referring to the nurse. At that point in time, this happened. He became conscious. Everyone who was there, the doctors, the family members, the nurses, they didn't see the manzar where he's talking to the Imam. All they saw was an individual talking to himself with bandages on him. So they thought he was mumbling. When they thought that he was mumbling at that state and that environment, they said, what just happened? What did we witness? He says, remove the bandages. They said, you have a lot of burns. We can't remove. He said, remove the band. He said, you're in pain. He says, no, I feel no pain. My pain is gone. He said, we don't believe it. They said, remove the bandage. He removed the bandage. There was no pain. There was no hurt. There was no hurt. He says, what was going on? He says, I saw my Imam at this point in time. And he explained what he just saw. And he said that when you were saying that this is a Sayyid, who are you referring to? And you were pointing to the nurse. He said, you saw that? He said, yes, we saw that. At that point in time, they said, the nurse herself said, I had a doubt of whether I was Sayyid or not. Because I knew my family says we are, but we didn't know. At that point in time, when I heard you say that, now I have certainty that we are from that line. And they said, you have no pain? He says, what is going on? The doctor said, explain what's going on. He says, the one whose Masa'ib I recited my whole life has cured me. And there's nothing. This is one waqiyah, this is one narration. How many, put your hand on your heart, how many do you yourself know, family members, relatives, people who had cancer, people who had life-ending illnesses, saved through the karam of Husayn ibn Ali? In the most difficult and dire situations. Thousands of narrations. People who are on their last breath with the khaq of shifa. Khaq-e-shifa of Imam al-Husayn from the actual turba. People granted shifa. Whether you believe, don't believe, Allah knows. The miracles and the cures are coming from Sayyid al-Shuhada. There is no limit. And I don't have the time. But remember, in Sayyid al-Shuhada there is a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Try to reflect on that, try to understand it, and you will try to understand who Husayn is. Who is Husayn in a global sense? Husayn is the only Husayn. We have 12 Imams. 4 of them named Muhammad, 4 named Ali, but there is only one Husayn. There's a secret of Allah in this. In fact, the name Husayn never existed before Husayn ibn Ali. The first person in history, Ali may exist before. Other names existed before, but Husayn ibn Ali is the first Husayn in history. Do you know what Husayn means? It means at the same time beauty, at the same time it means purity, and at the same time it means goodness. Husayn means little beauty. What are the virtues that Sayyid al-Shuhada has? What are the nature of Sayyid al-Shuhada that you and I benefit from? The universal message of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Number 1, his stand for truth, his stand for justice, his stand for honesty, his stand for integrity. That's a lesson that does not matter if you're a Muslim, non-Muslim, doesn't matter. Husayn gives the lesson to you and I. That's why the poet says, Insan ko bedar to ho lene do, har qaum pukaregi hamare hain Husayn. Allow the consciousness of mankind to awaken. Josh, the poet says, and every nation and every tribe will call out that Hussein is ours. Hussein is ours. But where does the discussion of Hussein come? We just commemorated his father, Hussein. Who is Hussein and who is his father? Allahu Akbar. What position did Allah give Hussein and what position did Allah give his father? That the poet says, Ruhe azan hai baap, to beta namaz di. Ruhe azan hai baap, to beta namaz di. Masjid Ali ki hai, to musalla Hussein ka. Allahu Akbar. Allahumma salli ala. रूहे आज़ां है बाप तो बेटा नमाज दी, मस्जिद अली की है तो मुसल्ला हुसैन का। और जागीर किबरिया हुई तकसीम इस तरह, जागीर द स्टेट, जागीर किबरिया हुई तकसीम इस तरह, काबा अली का अर्श मुअल्ला हुसैन का। जागीर किबरिया हुई तकसीम इस तरह, Kaaba Ali ka arsh mualla Hussain ka. The poet says the estate of Allah was distributed in such a way that the Kaaba of Allah became Ali's because Ali was born there. And the arsh of Allah became mualla, that was Hussein's. There is only the arsh of Allah that is mualla, and there is only Karbala that is mualla. Do you know the position of Karbala? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I heard this directly from Ayatollah Hadi Mudarrisi. Many of you may have heard it as well. He says on the day of judgment, Allah will pick up the land of Karbala by itself and take everyone on it to Jannah. No questions asked. That's why many of the scholars, they don't leave the land of Karbala. The Mudarrisi family and others. Because on that day, Allah, no questions asked. Because of the barakah of Sayyidul Shuhada, no questions asked. In fact, the poetry that you were just listening to a moment ago, what was it saying? Nijat le jao. Go and take away being forgiven. How? Allama Hilli, one of the greatest scholars of Tashayyu, had a question. His question was that how is it that someone cries 2 tears for Sayyidul Shuhada, they are forgiven? How? How's it possible? Forgiven? He saw a situation. I don't have the time to narrate. I'm condensing as much as I can. He sees a situation where he sees the Imam of his time, Imam Sahib al-Rasul Zaman. He says, I want to tell you a narration. He says, what's the narration? There was a king who was stranded in a land. When he was stranded and he had gotten separated from his men, he was in a remote forest. When he was in a remote forest, he found a small cabin. When he found this small cabin, in the cabin were an old woman and her daughter and her son. At that point in time, he was dying. The king was dying. They didn't know it was a king. He said that, can you please help me? Can you save my life? At that point in time, Imam is saying to Allama Hilli, he says that he doesn't know it's the Imam. Nonetheless, he says, the king says, can you save my life? They said, what do we have? We have 1 sheep. This sheep gave them milk. That milk would help them survive. It also gave them some other things. He said, very well. They slaughtered the sheep. That's all they had. They slaughtered the sheep, gave the meat, cooked the meat, and gave it to the king. And he survived. He later joined with his army. He said, if you ever need anything, when I get back to my palace, come and I will take care of you. Some days later, and I'm just concluding inshallah. Some days later, there came a moment in time where this individual came and she came to the palace. Allama Hilli is narrating this. He says that the king said, they have come to ask for something. When they have come to ask for something, what should I give? The wazir said, give $1,000, 1,000 dirham, give this, give that. He said, all of you have not done justice. Everything that that mother and son had was their entire world was that sheep. So the only justice is that I give everything that I have, my whole kingdom. He says, Aba Abdullah gave everything that he had to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, when you cry for Sayyidul Shuhada, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in recompense of that, gives you whatever you want. This is the position of Sayyidul Shuhada with respect to him. Kaifiyat hai, 2 minutes and I'm concluding. Kaifiyat hai, naqabil izhar Husayn. Kaifiyat hai, naqabil izhar Husayn. आज हंसते हुए रोते हैं आजादार हुसैन. कैफियत है नाकाबिल इजहार हुसैन. आज हंसते हुए रोते हैं आजादार हुसैन. दुरूद भेजे मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद पर. अल्लाह से. I'm leaving everything. रुतबे में हो न जी तो वही शान चाहिए. اب نوح کو نجات کا سامان چاہیے. اللہ اکبر. Hussein and the Anbiya, Hussein and Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh, the ark of salvation. Who is Hussein compared to Nuh? رتبے میں ہو نجی تو وہی شان چاہیے, اب نوح کو نجات کا سامان چاہیے. کشتی ہو بادباں ہو نگہبان چاہیے, کشتی ہو بادباں ہو نگہبان چاہیے. کشتی کے تیرنے کو بھی طوفان چاہیے, لیکن یہ معجزہ ہے شہ مشرقین کا, خشکی پہ تیرتا ہے سفینہ حسین کا. لیکن یہ معجزہ ہے شہ مشرقین کا, خشکی پہ تیرتا ہے سفینہ حسین کا. The poet says Noah's ark required water. What is this ark of Hussein that does not even require water? The deserts of Karbala. And he takes you and I to salvation. Allahu Akbar. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Final moments. The poet says, مجھ کو دنیا میں کوئی شخص بھی ایسا نہ ملا, مجھ کو دنیا میں کوئی شخص بھی ایسا نہ ملا جو یہ کہہ سکتا ہو شبیر سے مانگا نہ ملا. مجھ کو دنیا میں کوئی شخص بھی ایسا نہ ملا جو یہ کہہ سکتا ہو شبیر سے مانگا نہ ملا, اور ایک بار ان کی سخاوت کے مطابق مانگے, ایک بار ان کی سخاوت کے مطابق مانگے, ایسا مولا کو کوئی مانگنے والا نہ ملا. ایک بار ان کی سخاوت کے مطابق مانگے, ایسا مولا کو کوئی مانگنے والا نہ ملا. درود بھیجے محمد والے محمد. اللہم صلی اللہ. اور شہن عاشور کی شب ایسے بجھایا تھا دیا, شہن عاشور کی شب ایسے بجھایا تھا دیا, ڈھونڈتی رہ گئی خود رات اندھیرا نہ ملا, ڈھونڈتی رہ گئی خود رات اندھیرا نہ ملا. The poet says that Hussein ibn Ali, he extinguished the candle on the night of Ashura in such a way that the individuals, that the night kept looking for darkness, it couldn't find it. Why? Because the 72 had become candles. The 72 had become light. This was Hussein. How does one explain Sayyid al-Shuhada, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein? With respect to Imam al-Husayn, just remember one thing. Take this message wherever you are. Whether it is the sayings of Sayyid al-Shuhada on freedom, his universal messages, make sure you share that message with someone, at work, at school, wherever you may be. And inshallah, through that, we'll get this message to every corner. I don't have time. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this holy gathering, to allow us to be amongst the companions of the Imam of our time, as well as the Imam Sayyid al-Shuhada. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the same way you blessed Fitrus, the same way that you blessed all the angels, the same way you blessed all of the creation, Ya Allah, grant us the blessing from the life of Sayyid al-Shuhada in our lives. Ya Allah, anyone who has a haja, anyone who is going through a difficulty, anyone who is ill, Ya Allah, grant them alleviation by Aba Abdullah al-Husayn. Ya Allah, anyone who's suffering from COVID, grant them alleviation from this illness through the barakah of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Ya Allah, anyone who is going through a financial difficulty, grant them alleviation from this difficulty by the barakah of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Aba Abdullah al-Husayn. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman and allow us to be amongst his companions when he returns. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Muhammad wa al Muhammad salawat. Let us give our salutations to our 12th Imam on the birth of his grandfather Imam Husayn alayhi salam. Afzal salat. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. میرا حسین باغ نبوت کا پھول ہے میرا حسین باغ نبوت کا پھول ہے
حیدر کے اس میں جان ہے، خون بطول ہے، میرا حسین باغ نبوت کا پھول ہے، گزرا جہاں جہاں سے نواسا رسول کا، گزرا جہاں جہاں سے، گزرا جہاں جہاں سے نواسا رسول کا، اب تک وہاں خدا کے کرم کا نزول ہے، میرا حسین باغ نبوت کا پھول ہے، ایسی عظیم ذات ہے مولا حسین کی، ایسی عظیم ذات ہے، ایسی عظیم ذات ہے مولا حسین کی، جس کے لیے حضور کے سجدوں میں طول ہے، میرا حسین باغ نبوت کا پھول ہے، جس کے لیے یزید نے اتنے ستم کیے، جس کے لیے یزید نے اتنے ستم کیے، وہ تاج تو حسین کے قدموں کی دھول ہے، میرا حسین باغ نبوت کا پھول ہے، دنیا میں اور کون ہے شبیر کے سوا، دنیا میں اور کون ہے شبیر کے سوا، ایسا سوار جس کی سواری رسول ہے، میرا حسین باغ نبوت کا پھول ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے، کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے، خدا کے دین نا خدا، خدا کے دین کے نا خدا، ہر ابتدا کے ابتدا، کرم کی انتہا حسین ہے، کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے، کرے جو کوئی ہمسری کسی کی کیا مجال ہے، جہاں میں ہر لحاظ سے حسین بے مثال ہے، یہ ہو چکا ہے فیصلہ، یہ ہو چکا ہے فیصلہ، نہ کوئی دوسرا خدا، نہ کوئی دوسرا حسین ہے، یا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے جس کی فکر کربلا، حسین وہ دماغ ہے، یہ پنجتن کی انجمن کا پانچواں چراغ ہے، حسن کا پہلا ہم سفر، حسن پہلا ہم سفر، علی کا دوسرا پسر، امام تیسرا حسین ہے، کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے، کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے، حسین سے جو دور ہے وہ سب غموں سے چور ہے، حسین کے جو پاس ہے غمِ جہاں سے دور ہے۔ یہ دین جس کی دین ہے، یہ دین جس کی دین ہے، جو زندگی کا چین ہے، وہ سچا قافیہ حسین ہے۔ کیا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے۔ قضا کے بعد پھر مجھے نہیں حیات مل گئی، فشار سے اس عذاب سے مجھے نجات مل گئی۔ سوال جب کیا گیا، سوال جب کیا گیا، حق ہے کون تیرا رہنما، تو میں نے یہ کہہ دیا حسین ہے۔ کیا حسین ہے، تو میں نے کہہ دیا حسین ہے۔ یا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے۔ وہ جس نے بند کر ہوا جلا دیا، بجھا دیا، زمین جو جس نے عرش سے بلند مرتبہ دیا، وہ جس نے کائنات کا، وہ جس نے کائنات کا نظام ہی بدل دیا، ایک ایسا معجزہ حسین ہے۔ یا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے۔ یا حسین ہے، نہ پوچھئے کہ کیا حسین ہے۔ افضل الصلاۃ محمد و آل محمد۔
برائے خوشنودیے باواز بلندتر صلوات۔ آؤ ملنگو آؤ مولا حسین آئے، آؤ ملنگو آؤ مولا حسین آئے۔ ملنگوں کا معنی ہے یعنی جو عشق حسین ہوتا ہے، جو نشے میں ہوتے حسین کے، جو عاشق ہوتے ہیں، اسے ملنگ کہتے ہیں۔ اور میرے خیال سے ہم سب ملنگ ہی ہے، تو ایک صلوات بھیجیے محمد آل محمد۔ آؤ ملنگو آؤ مولا حسین آئے، خوشیوں کے دیپ جلاؤ مولا حسین آئے۔ جھولے سے جو مس ہوگا اس کو ملے گی شفا، اس کو ملے گی شفا۔ فطروس کو بتلاؤ مولا حسین آئے، آؤ ملنگو آؤ مولا حسین آئے۔ جنو ملک بھی خوش ہے، فرش و فلک بھی خوش ہے، فرش و فلک بھی خوش ہے۔ دنیا میں دھوم مچاؤ مولا حسین آئے، آؤ ملنگو آؤ مولا حسین آئے۔ پوری دعائیں ہوں گی سب پر عطائیں ہوں گی، سب پر عطائیں ہوں گی۔ زہرا کے در پر جاؤ مولا حسین آئے، آؤ ملنگو آؤ مولا حسین آئے۔ یا علی سوئے مقدر والو دل کی مرادیں پالو، دل کی مرادیں پالو، اپنے نصیب جگاؤ مولا حسین آئے، آؤ ملنگو آؤ مولا حسین آئے۔ زہرا کا پھول آیا، قلب رسول آیا، قلب رسول آیا، سارے جہاں کو سجاؤ مولا حسین آئے، आओ मलंगो आओ मौला हुसैन आए। हे ये अली का वारिस मेरे नबी का वारिस, मेरे नबी का वारिस, मिदहत के गीत सुनाओ मौला हुसैन आए। आओ मलंगो आओ मौला हुसैन आए। देखो जफर मुर्तजा तुम पर हुई है अता, तुम पर हुई है अता, फूलों का मैं बरसाओ मौला हुसैन आए। आओ मलंगो आओ मौला हुसैन आए। आओ मलंगो आओ। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद। बारिदिगर सलावत।
Ziyaret.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وعنيس النفوس أيها المدفون بأرض توس، الرضا المرتضى الرازي بالقدر والقضاء، مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا وفي يوم الجزاء. وفقنا الله لزيارتك يا مولاه، ورزقنا الله شفاعتك في الدنيا والآخرة. السلام عليك وعلى أختك فاطمة المعصومة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وذليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه ربك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا.